The tires crunched over gravel as I took the final turn off the highway, just past mile marker 63, onto the road that used to lead to summer. Dying pines flanked both sides, their branches skeletal in the cold. The sky overhead, a bruised kind of gray, let in streaks of light that looked almost orange, casting an eerie glow over everything. I slowed down as the cabin came into view. Helena hadn't changed much, but the house had. The porch leaned like it was tired. Shutters dangled half off, swaying like broken fingers in the wind. The roof sagged in the middle, like it gave up halfway through a storm. I sat there in the car for a minute, engine idling, hands still on the wheel. I remember this porch bathed in sunlight, with my mother's record player humming through the open windows. We used to dance barefoot in the grass. But now, coming home isn't always sweet. I stepped out. Gravel shifted under my boots. The cold bit into my cheeks. The door creaked louder than I remembered. Dad's funeral was 2 weeks ago. A blur of black coats and polite nods. I flew in, stood in the back pew, didn't speak. Morrigan made sure of that. My older sister, always the one holding the family reins, and tightening them when she needed control. Soren handled the estate, cold, clinical, the lawyer cousin, more loyal to our family name than to any actual person. Lavinia, our middle sister, hovered behind them like she always did, silent, agreeable. None of them said much to me. He left me this house. No explanation. Just the keys. No one seemed to understand it, and no one tried to. I was the one who left, the black sheep, but also the one who made sacrifices in silence. Years of missed holidays, distance, and buried calls. Why this house? Why now? The paperwork had arrived last week. Odd timing, considering Soren always moved like clockwork. It said follow-up documentation, but the contents felt unfinished. Or maybe it was deliberate. Inside, the house smelled like dust, old wood, and something faintly sweet, the kind of smell that lived in the walls. Things were scattered, drawers open, books thrown around. Yet the living room, it was pristine. A single chair sat at the center of a spotless rug, perfectly aligned with the window. Waiting. For someone. Dad never sat by the window. Ever. Not in the years I lived here. Who did he wait for? I walked through slowly, taking it all in. Familiar objects twisted by unfamiliar placement. The family photo wall was still there, but mine were missing. Childhood pictures of Morrigan, Lavinia, even the dog, but not me. A quiet creak from upstairs stopped me mid-step. Wind, maybe, or the floor settling. I told myself it didn't matter. But it did. In the kitchen, I opened the old drawer where Mom kept her coupons. There it was, a thick envelope marked Crossley Estate, internal. It wasn't sealed. I pulled out the contents. Page after page of itemized assets, divided neatly among family members. Lavinia got the piano, Morrigan got the jewelry. Soren's name was scribbled next to land titles and antique furniture. My name wasn't there, not even once. On the last page, a yellow sticky note stuck out. She doesn't need it. No signature, just that. I stood there frozen, the pages trembling slightly in my hand. So, what was this? Some cruel final joke? A punishment? An afterthought? I pressed my forehead to the cold glass of the kitchen window. My breath fogged it up. I wasn't crying, but it felt like something inside me cracked. I'll find out, I said quietly. I'll figure out why this house came to me, and why none of them wanted me near it. My fingers brushed something soft on the counter, a napkin, folded into the shape of a bear. My mom used to do that when I was little, every night at dinner, even when I was the only one who'd laugh at it. I picked it up, stared at it, smiled, just a little. I slipped it into my coat pocket without thinking, a reflex, like holding on to something small when the rest of the ground feels like it's falling away. Later, I sat alone in the living room. The sun had set completely now. Shadows owned the walls. I hadn't turned on any lights, didn't need to. On the closet door, faint and nearly worn away, I spotted something carved into the wood, my childhood name. Ellie. I whispered it out loud. So you did remember me, I said, touching the name with the tip of my finger. But then I stared down at the folder again. The pages that erased me. If he remembered me, why did he make me disappear on paper? I woke to the sound of nothing. No wind, no creaking wood, just stillness thick enough to choke on. My neck ached from sleeping on the lumpy couch, and the cold draft from the cracked window reached straight into my bones. I rubbed my eyes and pulled the blanket tighter, but it didn't help. The kind of silence that hung in that room didn't feel peaceful. It felt pointed, like a held breath, or the moment right before someone says something they'll regret. I reached for my phone. No messages, no missed calls, no new emails, not even from Lavinia. They all knew I was here. Soren had sent the keys, for God's sake. Morrigan practically shoved the estate papers at me at the funeral. I got up, walked over to the front door, and opened it just enough to peek outside. The mailbox was stuffed, swollen with damp envelopes and junk mail. No one had touched this place in weeks, not even for appearances. Back inside, I dug through a pile of outdated magazines on the kitchen table. And underneath a copy of a gardening guide from 2009, I spotted an envelope. Cream-colored. No stamp. My name written on it in neat cursive. Old-fashioned, like someone from another time wrote it with care. No return address, no seal. Just that name staring back at me. I opened it slowly. Inside was a short note, written in that same hand. Not everything your father left was accidental. What he hid is not what he was. Behind the face he showed the world, something waited. Look deeper. No signature. No clue who sent it. Just that quiet implication that I didn't yet know what I'd stepped into. I stood there, staring at the words. The handwriting looked vaguely familiar, but it was just enough off that I couldn't place it. My gut tightened. There was something else under the surface, not just memories, secrets. I slipped the note into my coat pocket and turned to leave the kitchen when the landline rang. I jumped like I'd been shot. That phone hadn't worked in years. Or so I thought. The ancient beige receiver sat on a wall mount by the pantry. It rang again, slow, sharp. The display said unknown. I didn't even know it had caller ID. I hesitated, then picked it up. Hello? Silence. Then a low, rough voice. Male, not young. Ellie, he said. I froze. No one had called me that since before I left. Did they find it yet? He asked. Who is this? I asked. Click. The line went dead. Nothing but the hollow tone of disconnection. I stared at the phone. Hit redial. Nothing. Checked the call log. No record. I stood there, heart pounding, breathing shallow. That wasn't a wrong number. That wasn't a prank. Someone knew I was here, knew me, and they were watching. Later that afternoon, I curled up on the couch, phone in hand, trying to make sense of everything. Out of habit, I opened social media. There it was, a photo, Lavinia, at Morrigan's house. Tagged at the table with wine glasses, a cheese board, and Soren's smug face right there in the background. The caption, Estate Discussion Day, one last round. No mention of me, no invite, no text, no call, no apology. They were meeting without me, again, just like when Dad got sick, just like every family holiday for the last 15 years. I sat upright, so that's how it was going to be. Give her the house and keep her away from everything else, out of sight, out of mind. But why? What did I have that they didn't want me near? I set the phone down and walked into the kitchen, started wiping off the old counters. Something fell from behind the bread box with a clatter, a small handheld recorder. Dusty, scratched. I turned it over in my hand, thumb brushing the play button. It clicked on, at first, static, then, Dad's voice. I should have said it sooner. But by the time you're hearing this, maybe it's too late. I didn't do it right, none of it. But hiding it was easier, safer. Morrigan. She always knew more than she said. The tape cut off. I just stood there, holding it. That voice, dry, defeated, wasn't the man I remembered, not the cold one from the dinner table. This was something else. A man afraid. I walked outside as the sky started to dim. The cold hit harder now, and the drizzle had turned the ground slick. I needed air, space, distance from the voices in my head. As I reached the end of the front porch, I saw him, a figure across the street, still, watching. By the time I blinked, he was gone, melted into the fog like he'd never been there. I took a shaky breath. If this house is hiding something, I whispered to the wind, I'm not leaving until I find it. I turned back toward the front door, a strange certainty blooming in my chest. This wasn't just a home, it was a stage, and the play had already begun. I couldn't sleep. The breath of wind that slipped through the gaps in the window made shadows dance across the room. I sat up, every creak of the house sounding like a footstep I couldn't see. I guess after last night, after the phone call, quiet isn't comfort, it's suspicion. I got out of bed and followed the hallway to the study. Every floorboard underfoot sounded different, some hollow, some solid. I paused above what felt like empty space, then put my weight there. The board flexed slightly, like it was scared of revealing too much. Light from the hallway flickered as if the house was breathing. I shone my phone into corners, remembering childhood nights when noises were just animals, or the wind. Now, every sound felt like proof that someone had been here, walking these same floors, hiding secrets under them. Rusty nails and splintered wood from the study door scraped against the frame when I pried it open. By flashlight, I discovered an odd floorboard in the corner, different texture, faint gap around the edges. I fetched a flat tool from the garage, kneeling down with a strange mix of dread and determination. The metal box inside smelled of earth, dust, and regret. When I forced it open, the hinges groaned, but inside was worse. Old photograph. A woman I don't know cradling a baby. My father smiling in a way I never saw him smile with me. Beneath the photo, a letter addressed to my daughter, but not Ellie, not me. My throat went dry. I traced her face with a finger trembling. He had another life, another child. I pressed the letter to my chest. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from what they do to you. It comes from what they refuse to tell. The house creaked louder. Windows rattled with a gust outside. I thought of every time he disappeared without explanation. Of my mother, waiting. Of me, asking questions that were swallowed. I bent to the window and touched the glass. A light rain was streaking down. The world felt soaked in memory, each droplet a reminder. I wasn't the only one missing. Then a soft thump at the front door. My heart pounded. I backed away, turned, listened. Silence. I held my breath. I wondered, did someone know I found the photo? Did he watch me walk through his old house looking for pieces? At dusk, I locked every door and checked every latch. I walked from room to room, carrying the metal box tucked inside my jacket, my pulse in my ears. And then I saw it, behind the bookshelf in the study, carved so lightly I almost didn't believe it. You'll understand when you hear everything. Then initials, MJL. That matches the recorder, the letters, a sign that this house kept not just objects, but messages. Messages meant for me. I lay down that night with the box at my side. Dawn was hours away. I drifted in and out of sleep. Then, a soft, deliberate knock, 3 knocks, from inside the wall behind me. I paused. My heart thudded. I whispered into the dark, "Whatever you buried here, Dad, I'm digging it up." I closed my eyes, fighting chills. Not from cold, from what's coming. The pale light from early morning seeped through the ripped curtains in my father's study, casting lines across the old oak desk. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the papers, my hands still trembling. The note under the door last night, its words weighed heavy. Not everything your father left was accidental. I could almost feel someone's breath behind my back, even though I was alone. I rifled through the desk drawers, old letters, bills, trust documents stacked in layers. Some were yellowed, edges curled. I recognized a few signatures easily, Morrigan's neat looped script, Soren's block letters. But then I found versions of deeds, of trusts where my name appeared, but in tiny print, misspelled, buried beneath sentences laden with clauses that seemed designed to erase. I read a clause that said I would forfeit any claim if I disputed anything. My chest tightened. It was like being offered recognition that was only skin deep. In the afternoon, I steeled myself and headed to the basement. The stairs groaned under my weight. Down there, the air was dank. The single bulb swung and cast shadows that looked like hands. Behind dusty boxes, I found a door I'd never seen before. It opened stiffly. Inside, ledgers, artifacts, folders, my father's old business ledgers, many listing properties, income, land, names I didn't recognize carrying ownership. I pressed my palm to the wood paneling. Morrigan's name appeared repeatedly, as though she was both caretaker and beneficiary. Soren's name, too, in faded ink. On a shelf, I saw it. A contract, old, worn, with what looked like my signature, but incorrect. Not exactly mine, a forged hand, or a careless copy. Either way, my heart pounded. That contract transferred some of Dad's river property I believed was mine based on an old photo and childhood memory. I held the paper steady, tried to control the sting in my throat. "Who trusted that paper?" I asked silently. "Is that signature mine?" The anger came sharp. Betrayal isn't loud. Sometimes it's a whisper in legal terms. I remembered Dad's last visit, how he promised I'd understand someday. I thought I had. But now the blinds of those promises were being raised. Maybe I misheard him. Maybe I didn't fight enough. Maybe I accepted too much silence. Doubt crept in. But so did something else. Resolve. As dusk fell, I took the contract and went to Marcy Boone's house. I needed her eyes, her steady voice. She compared samples, old signatures, handwriting, from letters, documents. Her face changed when she saw similarities that were too close for comfort. "This is built on shadows," she said. I rested the paper on her kitchen counter, tried to breathe. Returning home, I felt the weight of the house around me. Wood panels whispering secrets, floorboards creaking under my feet. I locked each door, checked each window. Upstairs, I paused in front of the study. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. A scuff outside the back porch, a sound too deliberate to be the porch settling. They thought I would sleep through this. They thought silence was their shield. But I am awake now. I hold proof. I know how to read the walls. The morning sun leaked through the dusty blinds when I stepped out of my car in front of the courthouse. My hands clutched a folder heavy with documents, copies of the contract, the questionable will, and deed versions with my name buried in legalese. The air tasted like rain and determination. Mr. Jameson, the notary who knows more than he says, met me at the entrance. He looked at the folder, then at me. He told me the signatures had passed through Morrigan's attorney. He said I could try to challenge them, but warned, under family trust law, if it was signed under family trust terms, it's a mess. I nodded, though my heart felt in knots. Frustration settled like a lead weight. Disbelief whispered in my mind. How deep the betrayal ran. I left with copies in hand, but the disappointment in my chest was sharp. Proof in writing, yet still so little voice until now. Later that day, my phone rang. I knew it would be Soren. There was no apology in his tone. Only the kind of cold calm that says, "I know you're listening, and I don't care." He said, "Stop digging into Dad's mess." Then, "Leave it alone before it gets uglier." That voice knew exactly what strings to pull. He sounded like he'd rehearsed, as if he knew I'd found things. My skin prickled. They knew I was staying alone in this house, that people in town were already whispering. Then he said, "Some things you find might not keep you safe." Click. Silence. My throat tightened, like someone had squeezed it. Protective anger rose. This wasn't about money. It was about being silenced. Not this time. Not by him. I spent the afternoon pacing in the study, pulling books, scribbling notes. They want me quiet. They want me complicit. I thought of my mother, who always said I had too much fire. Painful memories flared, me excusing their absence, believing promises, swallowing lies. I set up a hidden camera, voice memos. If I had proof, I needed it recorded. No more edge of shadows. I would hold my part of Dad's legacy, even if every step felt like walking on glass. Evening came. A message popped on my phone screen from Lavinia. I didn't know. Please meet me. My breath caught. Guilt? Genuine regret? Or a trap? I replayed all memories, her silence, her nodding along, the way she avoided looking at me at family gatherings. Still, I arranged to meet her at our favorite cafe the next morning. I grabbed the recorder, tucked it in my bag. Trust had fractured long ago. Maybe this was a crack in the wall. Later, I sat in my father's study, the notebook lying open before me, underlined in his handwriting. You never lose by speaking truth. You lose when you let fear write your silence. My chest tightened as I read. He left these words, planted them in his own clutter. I pinned deeds and letters on the wall, mapping who signed what, when, yarn tied to nails, maps to properties, names circled in red. I whispered to myself, they left me crumbs, thinking I wouldn't be hungry for more. Night fell heavy. I looked at the old photo of Dad and the unknown woman, noting the back, faint date, faint location. White River Bend, MJL. I Googled in bed with trembling fingers. Nothing official. Unlisted property, unregistered name. Yet the truth flickered. I could almost see it beyond the edge of light. I didn't pack much, just enough for a drive, just enough for a confrontation, or a discovery. I arrived at the cafe downtown when morning was still pulling itself together. The windows steamed, the coffee smelled like rain-washed asphalt. Lavinia was already there, hunched over a table in the corner, her hands wrapped around a mug. She looked older than I'd ever seen her. Her eyes flicked up when I sat across from her. "You came," she said, voice low. I nodded, leaning forward. "What have you got?" Her mouth curved into something like regret. Lavinia swallowed. "I found out about the second mortgage. After Dad started failing, Soren pushed through paperwork I didn't understand." She hesitated, glancing at the door. "They said he wouldn't make it past the year. They used that to justify something I didn't know I was signing." She pulled a flash drive from her purse, sliding it across the wood grain. "Emails. Conversations. You deserve them." I didn't say thank you. My chest was too full. I said, "I'll decide what this means when I read it." That night, I locked every door and lit a single lamp in the study. The house felt too quiet. I plugged the drive into my laptop. The screen glowed. The messages started. Morrigan writing about distance, saying I lacked legal awareness, describing me as emotionally volatile. Email threads referencing keeping her out of the loop. Worry she'll cause trouble. And buried in code, a mention of White River Bend property, never on family maps under my name. Reading it felt like old scars reopened. Names I trusted used to shape the lie. I felt naked, exposed. Memory came uninvited. 4 years ago, dinner at Dad's dining room. I asked Soren about bank statements. Everyone's plates paused. Morrigan's hand dropped mid-lift. She said, "Ellie, let it go. You're making ghosts." They all turned. I remember to this day how pack faces shifted. I was branded, discredited. And now, in the quiet glow of my desk lamp, I saw what they'd built. Stories to dismiss me, paperwork to silence me. Then I checked the hidden camera feed. It was almost 2 in the morning. The study door creaked open. A figure in gloves moved to the desk. I rewound. They rifled through drawer after drawer, didn't look up at the lens. And then, gloves dropped something into the fireplace. Something small. I leaned so close I could see the shape. It looked like torn paper. I watched it burn. The firelight flickered, revealing nothing but ash and regret. My heart pounded. Was it Morrigan? Soren? Someone paid to protect secrets? I gathered what was dropped. A piece of paper, edges singed, faint words. "If she ever returns, tell her everything. Don't protect me." Dad's handwriting. I tucked it next to the flash drive and shoved both into my coat. I walked to the stairs, sat there, breaths loud in the darkness. They thought silence was their power. But now I held their words, truth in ink, in firelight. I packed a duffel bag, old clothes, notebooks, those documents. By dawn, I'd be driving to White River Bend, No warnings left, no pretenses. They thought I would run when it got sharp, but this time I won't. The sky was bruised as I pulled off the road toward White River Bend. I carried the old journal, the wrapped will draft, and the flash drive full of damning words. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. Trees pressed in on either side, darkness creeping fast. The cabin ahead looked weathered, sad, like it had been waiting for me to arrive with answers I half hoped I wouldn't have to face. Lavinia stood on the cabin porch when I pulled up. She had the journal in one hand, trembling like it carried fire. I stepped out. The cold bit at my cheeks. She met me with eyes I could barely read. "I stole this from Soren's desk," she said, voice rough. I held my breath. "Dad wrote a letter," she continued, flipping pages, "saying you deserved truth. He'd planned to tell you everything, but Morrigan intercepted, burned parts of it." The words staggered me. I saw scratched entries. "My daughter deserves truth," carved sloppily, pages torn away. The betrayal sunk deeper, more than contracts, more than names. This was intention. Entire parts of our family history vanished because Morrigan chose to let them. Lavinia handed over a paper showing a contract bearing what looked like my signature. But handwriting experts in the email she sent said the style was wrong. Too neat, too forced. That signature was used to move ownership of the remote river property I believed was Dad's. That property from the photo, where he smiled with someone, a woman I had never met. My throat became dry. "Did you ever believe they were protecting me? Or just hiding me?" I asked, my voice breaking. She looked away, tears brimming. Rage and sorrow coiled in me together. The discovery that my name had been used, but not honored. Inside the cabin, I traced my fingers over the fireplace, the floorboards, the walls. I saw initials carved faintly. MJL. Same initials in the recorder transcript, same in what was buried under floorboards before. I pulled up a loose floor tile near the hearth. Beneath it, oilcloth-wrapped documents, the original will draft, letters from Dad saying he split his time between two lives. He asked that someday I'd understand why he never spoke about her, about the woman in the photo. My heart thundered. Discovery and heartbreak mingled. The truth I believed in was inside these walls. The cabin didn't hide its history. It stored it, like a wound waiting to be seen. I snapped photos, recorded voice memos on my phone. Each document, each torn piece, each name circled in those papers, all evidence. I remembered Mr. Jameson's words. Pattern matters. Proof matters. I needed enough. And I had enough now to confront more. I felt relief, mixed with dread. Hope tinged the edges, but fear cast long shadows. The sun dipped low. Orange streaks faded to purple over the river bend. I sat on the porch clutching the journal and will. Then I saw headlights across the water, reflecting off dark glass. And too late for a neighbor, too close to be coincidence. My pulse slammed, my breath caught in my throat. I whispered so the wind could hear me. So, they followed me here. I left the cabin before sunrise, storm clouds gathering low over the road. The air smelled like wet pine and rain. My hands held Dad's journal, the original will, and every document I'd gathered so far. I drove into Helena with the windows cracked, trying not to shake. My phone buzzed once. Blocked number. I ignored it. At the lawyer's office, I walked in, dropped the papers on the desk, and watched someone stamp filed with a date. Everything was now official. The truth was no longer just whispers. It was something they couldn't pretend didn't exist. I arrived at Morrigan's estate uninvited. The front gate was open. Headlights from cars already lit the driveway. Morrigan was waiting on the porch with Soren and Lavinia beside her, a lawyer standing with them. My chest thumped. I stepped forward, handing out copies of the hidden will, the journal entries, and the logs from the flash drive. Morrigan's eyes flicked over them. "You don't know what he really meant," she said, voice trembling. Her attempt to spin the story. I held my ground. "No, I know what he actually wrote." Lavinia's face broke. She confirmed timelines, lies, parts that were burned, parts that were hidden, parts erased. There was yelling, accusations. Soren called me ungrateful. Morrigan cried about loyalty, about family. The lawyer backed away. I felt the wave of truth crash. I felt exposed, but powerful. As I prepared to leave, 2 police cars rolled in. Flashing lights reflected off the estate walls. Officers asked for my name, asked what documents I had. I passed over the copies, listed witnesses, backing up every word. They mentioned financial fraud, forgery, no names yet. Morgan lost composure. "She's lying," she shouted. "This is harassment." But the officers were calm. They listened. That night, at a motel, I received one last blow, a voicemail from Mr. Jameson. There was an anonymous bidder for the river property through shell companies. The person behind it, your ex-husband. He colluded with Soren. The words burned. I had trusted him, shared parts of Dad's letters with him. To think he used that trust to block me. I clutched the phone, tears I refused to let run freely. I drove to Dad's grave. Rain started. I stood there with the letter, one page left unsinged, placing it gently on the stone. I whispered, "You tried to protect me in your own broken way. I see it now." Then I burned the rest. The flames caught in the wet grass. I felt a strange peace. A stranger walked up, old, hunched, with kind eyes. A friend of Dad's, I learned. Someone who had seen all sides. Someone who said quietly, "You did good." My heart caught. My phone buzzed. An encrypted email appeared. Subject line, "You don't know everything." I opened it. A scanned image. My father holding a newborn baby. Dated 1 year before he died. There's still more. The photo from the anonymous email sits on my desk under soft lamplight. Dad holding a baby. No timestamp, no metadata. I reach out to Jameson first thing. His voicemail crackles. He can't trace the source. Doesn't know the photographer. I stare at the print. The softness in Dad's eyes. The curve of the baby's cheek. Proof of a life I never lived. And I realize it doesn't matter who that child is. What matters is he had secrets. Some ghosts stay buried, but I've seen enough to know even hidden truths cling. Back in the car, driving toward what used to feel like someone else's life. The house now belongs to me. I pull into the driveway and pause at the threshold. This place, old wood, familiar echoes, no longer threatens. I move through room after room, empty boxes, dusting off a window ledge. I find a sealed envelope, Dad's handwriting, "If she ever returns." Inside, a note, "Forgive me, but protect yourself." Warm grief, peace. I tuck it away. At the courthouse, packed courtroom, quiet murmurs. Morgan sits back, pale, eyes red. Soren absent. I hand the judge copies, will, contracts, letters, evidence laid bare. The judge reads with steady eyes. At the bench, they rule in my favor. Assets, property, rights, all transferred. Morgan's claims disqualified. Outside, Lavinia finds me, draws me into a hug. "I didn't know what he meant to you. I do now." I let the forgiveness settle, not for them, but for me. Weeks pass. I hire carpenters. Renovations begin. I turn Dad's study into a sunroom with windows facing east. Light here feels honest. Local folks nod when I drive by. Some who once whispered now admire the grit. I hang Dad's journal in a frame, open to, "You never lose by speaking truth." Stanza. I plant flowers under the front porch. I sit in the sun, textbook in hand, reflecting. Pride, acceptance, a house made whole. One afternoon, I walk the Riverside Trail, Dad's favorite. Find the old bench he carved initials into years ago. The wood is weathered. I carve mine beneath his, E beside R. My roots, his roots, tangled, growing. Autumn gold leaves drift down as children laugh in the distance. At the house, I host a small dinner, neighbors, friends, laughter over shared food. They call me Robert's girl. And I let the title rest on my tongue like something I finally earned. Night settles. On my porch, I journal. Maybe love is what we build, not what we inherit. I close the book. Light flickers inside the house. In the bookshelf corner sits the framed baby photo. Unnamed, still. My phone buzzes. Jameson's email. Still digging. You might want to sit down for this. My chest steadies. The past isn't gone. It's part of me, woven through each document, each scar, each victory, but I'm not afraid anymore.